Imagine being one of the most successful hip-hop artists to come out of your country, have longevity for over 7 years, and yet still being, in my opinion, one of the most disrespected acts in UK rap. That is exactly what D Block Europe is. For some reason, people refuse to give D Block Europe their flowers, and yet these guys have been around for so long and are still killing it 7, 8 years on since they came up. And from what I see online, what I see in my comment sections, these guys just seem heavily disrespected. Now you might be thinking, Nollid, surely they haven't been around for that long. Trust me, yes they have. This video was 13 years ago. Young Ads behind bars on linktr.ee. I don't know how old he was here, but he was definitely a teenager.
Listen, look, little ads look innocent but far from it. Couple scraps on road, had man on car bonnets. I was on the grind trying to build a line, rang my woolly dumb mimes to try get quotes on that 9.
Like, they have been around for so long and they had talent from a young age. These freestyles caught the attention of big UK artist Jadakiss. As you can see here, 11 years ago, Jadakiss introduces D Block Europe in London. This was back in 2013. Jadakiss wanted to launch his record label, D Block, and he wanted to expand out of America. Hence, he came over to London to find an act in Europe, and that is what created D Block Europe. D Block was Jadakiss's label, and he had an act from Europe, so that's literally why they're called D Block Europe. Now, I'm sure most of you recognise who this is. Young Ads, probably the most popular part of D Block Europe. But when D Block Europe first started, it wasn't Young Ads and Dirtbike LB like it is now. It was actually with this guy, Aerosync. You can see LB was in here, but he wasn't actually part of that act yet. And it was only after Young Ads wanted to get Dirtbike LB off the streets that he brought LB into D Block Europe, and Aerosync was eventually removed out the group. And I guess sort of their first big hits, they had a few, you know, they had like the 3-9 Gotti remix, they had other tunes called Mazzoline, but this was probably the one where I discovered D Block Europe was Large Amounts of the Shard. These two songs really sort of put them on the map, and they were making music through the 2010s, but it was only really like 2017, 2016 where DB finally started to make a name for themselves. Wave music like that in the UK wasn't really a big thing at the time. The sort of main person who started it in the UK, I'd say, is Young Fume, and then people like M Huncho were coming through with their Mad About Bars, but DB was sort of like the forefront runners. They were the ones sort of really taking the sound into the UK and making it commercial, making it big and successful. And then I guess sort of after Nasty and these songs they were bringing out, Any Minute Now, which was a EP type thing that they did with Young Bane, was really one that started to pick up a lot more traction. Gucci Mane obviously being the standout track on here. I actually love this album. Old DB, like, bro, I love this shit. Rap Saved Me, probably still one of my favourite DB songs. They had their sound, it was working, and they were getting a lot of success from it. And so the time came where they wanted to make their own album, their first album that was going to come out, called Home Alone, and the first single that dropped off the album, Kitchen Kings, was one of the biggest songs in the UK at the time. These guys went seriously big off this tune. 53 million views, which is crazy, as well as 100 million streams on Spotify. But Home Alone, look at the numbers on this album. Seriously successful project, almost 20 songs as well on the album. This is not an easy thing to do, to be putting up millions of streams on 19 song albums, and this is from 2019. This project, yeah, still a classic DB tape in my eyes. DB had a different sound. They had this auto-tune reverby sound on their voice, and what made it successful is guys could fuck with it. A lot of guys fuck with sort of like the wave rap that they were making, but also girls. A lot of females don't like singing drill and ching, I'm chinging up. They'd rather be singing to something that they can like sing in the car or whatever. So that's what DB sort of found a lot of success with. While they had a big male audience, DBE appeals a lot to females as well, which is the reason why they found so much success. And so after Home Alone, they dropped PTSD. This had massive tunes on as well, Home Pussy, as well as Darling. You had like Outside was also a massive tune. But bro, this is a 28 song album, and look at the numbers on this album. And so after PTSD, they ultimately did not stop. They dropped Street Trauma as well in 2019. 2 albums in 2019. Remember, that was 28 songs. This was 16 songs. And then at the end of 2020, they dropped The Blueprint, which again was really successful. Again, almost 30 songs on an album, and look, millions of streams. And they've maintained this level of consistency while balancing tours. They shut down the O2 twice last year. And if I take you through the last couple albums they've dropped, obviously their streams have gone down a little, but bro, they're still putting up millions of streams on every song. 10 million, 20 million. DB World again the year before with millions of streams, a couple under a million, which is a rare occasion. Even on an interlude, they got 800k streams. So you can see people who are listening to DBE are listening to the full albums, and so that's why they're currently sat on 14 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Literally the only two rappers who have more are Dave with 16 million and Central C, who are on 31 million. And Dave and Central C are always like the two guys who are carrying the UK, do you know what I mean? They're making the UK sound bigger. DBE seem to never be put in that conversation, yet they're the guys who still have 10 million plus monthly listeners and are still getting millions of streams on their songs, even though they've been about since like 2017, 2018 in the mainstream. Just as a comparison, there's a lot of artists on here who came up around the same time as DBE, sort of like 2017, 2018. Fredo, for example, and the consistency is literally nothing like DBE. You can't even compare it. But I wouldn't say that's the best comparison, and although DBE have got a lot of monthly listeners, they basically struck luck a couple years back, because as you can see here, the biggest stream song on their Spotify by a country mile is Prada, with over 800 million streams on Spotify. And if I just take you to this song, you'll see that it's by Casso. This song Prada isn't the original song. This was a remix made by a guy on TikTok. He just made it for a bit of fun. The feedback he received and the love he got, people were like, you need to drop this shit. But this was originally just a remix he made for this song here, Ferrari Horses featuring Ray. And I actually prefer the original. I hate this Casso tune, bro. I don't know how people listen to this. Like, this sound, I don't know if you've ever heard it, but the beeping sound in it is so annoying. Like, I've probably played this song less than 5 times out my own will. And yet Ferrari Horses, the original off the Blueprint album, I thought was such a good song. So the monthly listeners talk, you sort of got to take with a pinch of salt, because yes, their monthly listeners are really high, but also they got very lucky by a guy remixing their song, and it's gone on to literally almost get 1 billion streams. It will probably get 1 billion streams. They'll join the billion stream club, which I don't think any UK rappers are in right now apart from Skepta. Central C and Dave probably going to get there with Sprinter. Central C maybe with Doja as well. So if I just compare those three were also the ones who got the most streams on Spotify last year by monthly listeners, like month on month. If you did an average, those three were the top for the year. And so you got Dave, who is highly respected as a UK rapper. A lot of people say Dave will be the greatest UK rapper ever. You got Central C, who, although he gets a lot of backlash, a lot of people are sort of giving him his flowers. It's about time, because what he's doing is just sort of like unmatched. And yet DBE, I see videos constantly on TikTok and other platforms, comments, where people just seem to keep disrespecting DBE, and a lot of it is probably down to the fact that they rap with auto-tune. That is literally probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people don't fuck with DBE, or just decide that they're going to give them a lot of hate because they don't like their music. I'm not going to sit here and make you like their music. I can't do that. If you don't like their music, there's nothing I can do about that. But there comes a point, as someone who's like a UK music fan, where you got to sit back and go, alright, yeah, maybe I'll give these guys their flowers. There's obviously a big market for it. And for me, as a music fan, as someone I listen to a lot, probably more rap that has like auto-tune and reverb on it than rap that doesn't. Because while I like rapping along to the rapping bits, I like when they're singing with a bit of melody and they got like good hooks and things like that. There's a lot of reasons why people like this music more than drill music or just like fast rapping. And so DBE have managed to stay successful for so many years because their audience is so big. DBE sort of appeal to sort of like the younger audience. They got a lot of young female fans who like singing their songs. And like I said, these guys sold out the O2 twice last year. I don't think people are really deep in that. They sold out the O2 twice, which is what, like 10,000 tickets back-to-back nights. There isn't many artists in the UK who could do that. Truthfully, I think that Dave, Central C and DBE are maybe the only three right now who could. And so I think it's just sort of become a trend in the UK that, oh, it's DBE and they make auto-tune music and this and that, and they sing about girls and all this shit all the time, that people just think, oh, I'm just gonna like take shit out on DBE. But if you look at how long they've been about, since 2018, 2017, even before that, when I showed you they were rapping in 2013, the guys can actually rap. They use the auto-tune because it's clearly what got them the most success. Like, it really makes me laugh that people will be like, oh, DBE need to cut the auto-tune shit, cut the auto-tune, and then they'll do some songs on the albums without the auto-tune, and those songs will perform way worse than the songs that have auto-tune. Music is a business. When you look at it as a business, you've got to just look, right, okay, maybe I'm not the audience for it, but this group is still one of the biggest rappers in the UK, so clearly there's a huge audience for it, and people just don't realise you guys just aren't the audience for it. And so while other genres of rap that people don't like, you know, maybe that's drill or maybe it's a certain artist, if they don't like it, they might say the odd comment, but the like barrage of hate that DBE get in comparison to other UK rappers, it's just sort of incomparable. I don't see the comparison. Now obviously part of that is to do because they're one of the biggest artists, so the bigger you are, the more hate you're gonna get. But I think it's just time for people in the UK, if they want the UK sound to get bigger and bigger, or they want the UK scene to grow like they say they do. Maybe it's time to give artists like DB their flowers and say, okay, maybe your music isn't my taste, but what you guys have been doing, to be doing it for 6-7 years consistently, longer than that, sorry, like way longer than that. What are we, 2025? 8 years, 7 years. Maybe time to give them their flowers and just hold your hands up and go, okay, not my taste, but I fuck with what you guys are doing. Because DB also paved the path before Central C. DB were the ones getting verses off Lil Baby. They've had verses off Kodak Black. They've had verses off Offset. So before, I know Central C's doing it now, but bro, these guys were doing it years before Central C. And I know people still fuck with songs like Nookie. And for me, yeah, okay, the standard of their music or the albums they've been making, it has declined in recent years. I think the last DB album I listened to the whole way through was Lap 5. But before that, I was listening to every project. Any Minute Now, Home Alone 2, Street Trauma, The Blueprint. I think they're just probably one of the most disrespected acts in the UK. Also, before I forget, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I keep forgetting to say it in my videos, so subscribe to the channel. It will help me out. Daily videos as much as I can, so make sure if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And unfortunately for DB, I think the only way that they'll really get the flowers they deserve, or that sort of respect they deserve, is either if something terrible was to happen to either one of them, or when they retire and people will go, okay, you know what, yeah, DB's music wasn't my sort of music, but what they did, the numbers they put up consistently for years on years, I'll hold my hands up, I've got to give them their flowers. But people just don't like to do that while they're still around, so I'll be the first to do it right here and say DB deserve their flowers. They have been consistently one of the biggest acts in the UK rap scene for years, literally 7-8 years, and their fan base is still strong as fuck. Like, those guys are not stopping. They could sell out like probably a UK tour tomorrow if they really wanted to. So whether you like their music or not, stop being a fanny thinking it's just cool to hop on the trend of DB hate, because there's so many artists in the UK right now who aren't dropping music, who haven't dropped music for years. And look, okay, yeah, an album is a lot of work, but there's nothing wrong with dropping a single or a little EP here and there just to keep your fans happy. You know, the people who have got you in that position, they're the reason why you're driving around in these fast cars. They're the reason you're in this mansion, and in return they don't get any tours, they don't get any music, they don't get anything. So these artists who aren't dropping music and are getting a lot more love than DBE, just have a think about that. All they really care about is their fans. They love their fans. They're consistently dropping music for their fans. They're not dropping music for the people that don't like it. And yet there's so many UK artists who aren't dropping music for their fans, and they're not getting near the level of hate that DBE have for years. So I think it's about time that DBE get a bit of the respect they deserve.